Welcome back to the channel where we try to look at everything from a kingdom perspective. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to live in the kingdom and being under the authority of the kingdom. Jesus talks about the reality of the kingdom in Matthew chapters 5 through 7. But today we'll be specifically covering the beatitudes in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. So we'll just get right into it. In Matthew chapter 5 it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." In this sermon, it talks about how people of God's kingdom should live and the principles that they should live by. And we're going to cover the first 3 verses in this sermon. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who mourn, and blessed are the meek. In this verse, when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who are poor in spirit," I don't think he is meaning to have a poor spirit and to walk around like, "Oh, woe is me." What I think he is getting at is to be empty so that he can come into your spirit and live within you and make his home in you. Someone who is poor in spirit, they're willing to remove any distractions that are preventing Christ from living within them and preventing Christ from working through them. And when you're distracted or when you're worried, it pushes Christ away. You can't really hear from him like you need to. And when you think about it, it's like how the system is designed for us. We have this map that's laid out for us. You have to go to school, you have to get a career, you have to get a family, you have to get a job. And within all those things, it brings in worries and distractions from life that prevents you from relying on Christ, being poor in your spirit, and emptying yourself from those distractions and from those worries. When I'm worried about those things, I'm not worried about Christ, and I'm not letting him come in my life and live out through me, because I'm pushing him to the side and I'm making all those other things the focus of my life and giving those other things my attention. In grade school, we get stuck about acceptance and how people view us. And then moves on to college, how we're going to pay for college, how we're going to get the right degree, how I'm going to go for the right career. And then that goes on to the next thing. You're trying to start a family and you're searching for a husband or you're searching for a wife. And then you're distracted and you're worried about that. As you notice, as we keep going in this cycle, our focus is less on Christ and more about preserving ourselves and more about building up our own kingdoms in our own life, and not being focused on Christ and allowing him to come into our spirit, emptying everything that is taking the place of Christ and opening yourself up and allowing Christ to come within your spirit. And the system is set up to where when you go through these stages in life, it brings on worries and it brings on responsibilities that it forces you to have to depend on the system. And when you're depending on the system, then you have made the system your idol. You've made the system the God of your life. And now Christ is so far away. The system wants you to depend on it so you don't depend on God. The system doesn't want you to find out about God. The system doesn't want you to know about God. The system wants to be your God so that you can depend on it. This is a spiritual battle. Every single day the fight is for our soul. We're either going to let Jesus come into our spirit, take it over, renew us, transform my mind, transform my will, transform my emotions, and have it align up with him and the principles of his kingdom. Or we're going to let Satan come in, take over our flesh, and have us go after the desires and the worries of this world, be distracted from Christ, and end up building up Satan's kingdom, and then having to depend on the system to be able to survive or to live. When Jesus said, "Take my yoke, because my yoke isn't heavy. Seek first the kingdom of God, and then everything else will be given to you." But we seek first the system and think that depending on the system is going to take care of our worries, is going to take care of our needs. When the system has always failed us, the system will never be able to take care of us, right? Because it's a flawed system that is filled and fueled by sin. Nothing that is sinful is going to stay up. It's going to end up falling, and it's going to become corrupt, and it's going to fail you. In the second part of that verse, it says, "Blessed are those who mourn." And I'm sure we've all had to deal with some type of grief. I know for me personally, I haven't handled grief the right way. I've heard a lot of stuff in over the years in my experience with the loss of loved ones. My dad passed when I was 6. My grandmother's passed back-to-back years. And I don't think I necessarily really processed it in the right way. I had a lot of it in. That's just the way I cope with things. But I think when you do that, it affects you subconsciously. And I know for me, it made me insensitive about a lot of things. And I just kind of had it is what it is type of attitude. Well, death just happens. But I don't think that's really a healthy way to mourn or to grieve. So why does Jesus even have this in his sermon when he talks about how the people of his kingdom should live and the principles that they should live by? Why does he want us to mourn? And just from my past experiences, I think when you see everything that's going on in the world now and you don't mourn it, it can leave you very insensitive to what's going on in people's lives. It can leave you cold-hearted. And I can relate to that because I felt cold-hearted towards a lot of things because I've subconsciously held a lot of stuff in, and it's just not healthy. When we see children following the same generational curses that their families before them committed, we should mourn that because that cycle is continuing. When we see people not wanting to submit to God and not wanting to obey God, we should mourn that. All right, in this last verse, it says, "Blessed are those who are meek, for they will inherit the earth." Meek is basically being humble. And more than humble, it's willing to suffer, right? Because we're not worried about the world. We're not worried about what the world has to offer us. We just want to be under the ruling of God. We're not trying to conquer the world or build up ourselves and take over territory and make sure we have the biggest and the best of things, because we don't have to worry about that. All it says is, hey, be meek, you will inherit the earth. Now, people tried to force Jesus to do that. When he came, they saw him as this Messiah, this conquering Messiah who was supposed to take over all the territory and come relieve them from all their problems and from their suffering. And when Jesus wasn't on that. What Jesus was about was coming into their hearts and having them realize that I am the only person that you need. All these other things, all these other worries, don't worry about that. Worry about the bread of life. Don't worry about these material possessions or what you may gain or how to preserve yourself, or what you're going to eat the next day. Just worry about me. And that's what Jesus was wanting them to understand. Be meek, be humble. You don't have to be justified. You don't have to be right. All right, like who cares if you're right? And this is something that I struggle with. Trying to justify myself. When you're trying to justify yourself and prove yourself right, you're making that person the king of your life. And I'm not about to have nobody else be the king of my life but Jesus. Right? So I don't have to worry about being right because he already makes me right. He makes me righteous. So I can be meek and I can be humble and I can suffer and I can serve because I know that Jesus living in me gives me everything that I already need anyway. I just want him. So hopefully I explained these first 3 verses of what it looks like to live in God's kingdom and to come under the authority of his kingdom. These are things that we have to submit to, and we have to be under his ruling of these principles. If not, we're rejecting and rebelling against our king. So next week we'll continue in the Beatitudes and finish it up. And I'm going to make this Sermon on the Mount, I'm going to make it into a little series, hopefully maybe 4 or 5 parts. So hopefully you come back and continue to watch. Also, if you like my content, please make sure that you like, subscribe, comment. This helps me to be able to spread God's kingdom to more people through engagement in the comments, through the likes, through the shares. So I definitely appreciate the support that I've gotten. And as always, to my kings and queens, I invite you to the kingdom. Till next time.